Hey guys, so I wanted to answer this particular area of questioning which goes around what area of programming should you really invest in today? And this comes in as a question for a lot of professionals who are starting out as programmers who want to become coders, and they really don't know what area should they invest in. So here I'm going to explain to you about the various options and opportunities that a programmer would have largely, and the possible growth path of that option. So without further ado, let me jump into it. So there are primarily three areas that today the coders can get into. I mean, there are several other areas, but primarily these are the ones uh, which sort of have most of the action happening. Okay, if you're not looking at really enterprise level becoming a Java programmer and so on and so forth. So if you really are into getting into programming, either you can get into web development, or you can get into mobile development, or you can get into neural networks and AI and machine learning and so on and so forth. Now, the first two are pretty clear for a lot of people, and they understand the difference between web and mobile. So what I'm going to do is I will spend less time on that, and I'll spend more time on the third one, which is neural networks and AI, and I'll just probably share a few use cases with you as well on that. But I just wanted to touch upon the web development arena. So web development is like your fixed deposit. Okay, if you get into web development, the the ecosystem is very well known. The players are known. Yes, there is cutting edge development happening in the web world. With a lot of companies like Google and React JS from Facebook pushing the limits of how web will sort of render things. But end of the day, it's just doing things faster for a larger group of people. Web in itself isn't changing. Web is doing exactly what it was supposed to be doing. So if you take the concept of web development, and sort of extrapolate it between 10 years ago and today, it does the same thing. It basically takes data from different areas and displays it to you through a browser. So that doesn't change, and that will not change because that's the fundamental industry, the web development industry. And this displaying process happens mostly on your PC, and that's where the development engine is driven. And there are a lot of you know good companies out here. There are frameworks which are being launched. So there is a lot of action happening here, but mostly the action is happening uh, on an incremental basis where things will become faster, quicker, efficiency is improving, and so on and so forth. But web in itself is not changing. So you can expect a steady growth here. There is a very good large community which is there, but it will hit the path of law of diminishing returns. So if you create a site today versus what you have done created about 5 years or 10 years ago, it's easier to create a website today with less coding, and the amount of costing or the money that a web developer today gets for creating a website is much less compared to what he or she would have gotten doing the same job 10 years ago. And that's the law of diminishing return, that over a period of time the systems and processes mature, and that means that you sort of are operating in a quite mature space. The next one is mobile development. It is similar to web development, but here you have devices which are portable, which can be sort of put in your back pocket. So there is very high engagement, and it's kind of right on a growth phase. The reason I say that is because mobile penetration is growing across the world, and mobile being a very convenient and cheap device as compared to a laptop, it's much more easy to reach out to somebody through a mobile in comparison to a laptop, or a tablet, which is very specific or a niche area, if you may. So mobile development is picking up, and I think mobile development is different from pure play web development. Not very different, because it still uses the concept of a browser and data getting rendered onto that browser from a backend. But it sort of takes into account, various device features, various ecosystems. So there is Apple device versus this Android device and so on and so forth. So all that sort of needs to get factored in. So it's like investing in stock market. There is high growth in this market today. It will continue to grow because the market is like what web was in 2000 or 99. It's growing. It's adding a lot many users, and especially in the emerging markets where the cost of mobile is really low today. This is going to become a mass market play. This means that more people are going to be using apps, more people are going to be using mobile phones for their daily work. And that means if you are a mobile developer, your demand will be higher. You would be needed to sort of create those apps. You would be required to fix those apps. So that's really a upcoming area, and it's really picking up in a big way. The market's expanding here. The landscape is changing with new device capabilities. The devices are becoming much more powerful and integrated. So, the devices now have augmented reality capability with their camera and so on and so forth. And it's got a moderately large community. So that's mobile development. The final one is called neural networks, and this is where, most of the future development is going to happen. So this is like you being an angel investor and you're investing in a startup. So most people haven't heard about neural networks. Most people don't know what is AI. Most people don't know how it works. And probably most people never come to know about it. But the field in itself is going to be powering a lot of other areas. So wherever you have labor intensive work, wherever you have, high cost of operations, the neural network systems can really come and help you there. So if you are wanting to get into neural networks, it's like investing in a startup. You will get the returns after 4 or 5 years. So you have to wait and see how that sort of pans out. But after 4 or 5 years, you will be in a position where you'll be dominant in the market. So it's early stage, and most of the people in this area will become superstars in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. So very good investment. But yes, it is a new area, so there is low awareness among masses. The community is fairly small. The returns could be higher, but the stream may dry up. So what I mean by that is that you might want to get into a stream of neural networks. So let's say you want to get into robotics, and AI might do well, but robotics might not do well. I mean, robots traditionally haven't completely replaced human beings, while they were touted to do that several years ago. Now there's another wave coming in where they're saying that the robots will, become as intelligent as humans, but it might not happen. So the rest's a risk. So some of the AI areas will really shine. Some of the areas of AI will not see the traction as it's supposed to see. So neural networks is really upcoming area. So this has got a lot of potential. So as a developer, I hope you sort of understood what does all of these three areas sort of cover: mobile, web, and AI. Now, if you are interested to go further down this path, I wanted to take you into AI, and I will spend a few minutes explaining to you what AI development really means and what are those use cases that would come in and where will it fit in. And I'll sort of probably also give you a view of the market and my view as to how the AI will expand. So these are some of the use cases of neural networks. And AI and neural networks and machine learnings are interchangeably used, but primarily they use something called as a network, which with every progressive stage it gives you the desired result that you want. So it's a self-correcting network is called neural network, and that's what is AI. So a feedback mechanism happens within the network. It doesn't have to go out and then loop back. So self-driving cars is a big one, genetic engineering is a big one, robotics is a big one, targeted advertisement is a big one, speech recognition is a big one. These are some of the use cases where potentially things will come up and sort of take over. So self-driving cars, we've all heard about it. Tesla is already making it. Apple is making it. Google is working on it, and some of the large car makers like Volkswagen and all of them in some way, form of matter are doing it, and it's already become reality. And this is how things are gonna come up. Where car will typically become a robot, and it will come and take you from point A to point B. But the real question here is how much of this will turn into a mass market phenomena? Because remember, most of these cars which would come in would be good when you probably are going to be using this as an alternate to your existing driver. So let's say the cost of driver in a country is really low. Then there is no reason for you to build a self-driving car, because the driver cost itself is so low that you can afford a driver. So some of these developments, I would say, doesn't need to be sort of omnipresent like web. Web is really omnipresent, so everybody needs to buy groceries, so everybody would probably use Amazon, but everybody doesn't need to buy an AI car, because you could afford a driver in a low cost region versus a high cost region. So why would you invest in it? So it's kind of that argument where battery versus petrol. So if the cost of petrol drops really low, then chances are that nobody would do further development into battery driven cars. Anyway, so that's a different topic, but what I wanted to give you is a view of that. Then there is genetic engineering, which is coming up. There's a new technology which has come up called the CRISPR technology, where you can literally remove a part of the gene code and replace it with another gene code, which means that now you might you might want to have, let's say, babies with eyes of Kim Kardashian and ears of Russell Crowe, or the intelligence of perhaps the Einstein kind of thing. So all you need is the genes of that individual, and not the gene, just need the part of that gene. So if you have access to that gene, you could start creating what is called as designer babies. So while designer babies might be the fag end of the research, you definitely can develop human beings with resistance to diseases of a particular kind. So genetic diseases which gets passed on from parents to children will not get passed on, because you will do a genetic mutation right at the birth of the child. So children will be healthier, and so on and so forth. So those might be the sort of areas where it will start off with, but eventually it has the potential to bring in designer babies, where you can say, I want the hand of so and so person, the leg of so and so person, and so on and so forth. But again, this is a kind of a gray area, because it sort of starts sitting on the morality and legality aspects. So a government support would be needed to make this happen. But this is a prospective place where AI will definitely shine. Another one is called speech recognition. So now you already have in the form of speech recognition. Mobile phones have their own respective speech recognition software, like Siri is there for Apple, and Microsoft has one, Cortana, I suppose. I don't remember the name, but I suppose that's the one. And Google has, Google Now. So these are the speech recognition softwares, but they will get into a stage where you might pick up a phone and then you speak to somebody in English. Your phone understands that language. It converts your English into, say, Japanese, and the person at the other end who only understands Japanese will be able to speak to you, which means that there'll be no barrier of language across the world. You could speak in any language and the other person would understand, as long as he or she has a device fitted onto him, or to he carries a device which understands that. So that's huge, because that sort of will make the world a single place to operate and a single market to operate. So that's the potential for speech recognition. This is a big one which could happen. Then you could definitely hit into the area of robotics, where robots are becoming faster and smarter today, and they can do several things which they couldn't have done 10 or 15 years ago. This is really, really good because the robots are no longer dumb creatures. They can now start feeling stuff. They have pressure sensitive hands. They can display emotions. So the robots are almost starting to mimic human beings. So this could solve a lot of problems, and it could potentially also be threat to a lot of jobs. But again, this comes to my argument about low cost versus robots. So if you have a low cost region, let's say you have Bangladesh and you have got 1,000 employees in Bangladesh who can do a job for X dollars, and you need to build a robot, to do sort of that job over a period of 10 years, you will recover that cost. You might not want to go for that option at all. You might continue to use those cheap labor destinations to do your work, like a lot of companies do. So robots are good in sort of spaces where you cannot use cheap labor for whatever reason it is, because it helps in labor intensive work. But also, if there is an option for cheap labor, then there's no need to spend that money upfront and sort of invest robotics money into your business. And that's probably the reason why robotics might not immediately take up. It will take up in a period of 50 years when the overall economic development of the world has gone up. So let me give you an example. In the US, if you need to have a maid or a personal assistant, you need to pay a lot of money for that. And then a robotic assistant might be helpful for you in the US, but that's not the case in, let's say, Bangladesh or an Asian country like in India, or even for that matter, Vietnam or China or any of those countries which are still low cost and they can afford to have a resource who can do all of these things. So those cases are the areas where robotics might not necessarily pick up to the extent which is expected out of it. This one is a big one, which is called AI advertisement. So these are so far the advertisement strategy for every company has been what's known as carpet bombing. So you want to let people know that you've arrived. Go and splash up stuff in the newspaper, use radio, use every medium in your hands, radio, newspaper, internet, and you just hope that everybody will see it. And everybody will be aware of it. So that's the mass marketing or the carpet bombing approach. But of course, this is quite resource intensive because some of you might not want to use that particular product and you're still targeting that individual. So let me give you an example. I mean, if you look at iPhone ads, they would be all over the place, but the iPhone target population is very limited. And sometimes the ads are done more for awareness of the people who cannot afford it than for people who can actually afford it. So it's kind of a double whammy in that case. But what I'm trying to say is that some of those organizations who want to target an individual with particular ads, which are called as smart ads in that sense, can do so by understanding the consumer behavior, and consumer data will be key. So your consumer behavior in Google, your consumer behavior in Amazon, all of that data put together will make a profile of yours, and that profile will then go to a company, advertisement company, which will create a very specific marketing campaign for you, and that marketing campaign would sort of come and hit you. So your chances of picking up that product will be extremely high. So let's say I love cameras and you show me a particular brand at a particular time when my emotions are really high or low or whatever it is, right? I mean, I'm not getting into the psychology of it, but there are moments in humans' time when you will make a decision without thinking, without sort of really evaluating all the possibilities. And if you can find that weak moment of mine or any individual for that matter and you attack that individual exactly at that moment, you know, that's it. Yeah, the individual is going to pick that up, and the chances of picking that up becomes very high for it, without he even realizing that he actually he's got played on by you. So it's kind of a dangerous area to venture into, but a lot of companies are already doing it in a very non-partisan fashion. So if you go to Amazon and if you search your products, chances are that you'll find the same products over and over again. So that's kind of thing which is already happening, but this is not taking it to the next level. So this is kind of my view to the overall picture of AI and how it's going to change. So you can pick any of these areas. You could pick, let's say, self-driving cars. You could pick up genetic engineering, robotics, advertisement, speech recognition, and all of these areas are going to be upcoming areas, and you will do well in any of these areas that you pick up. So I hope you got a fairly good understanding about neural networks and how sort of it all ties into an area. So if you want to know more about it, don't hesitate to write to me. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Bye.